One of the strangest events that ever occurred in my life took place about 10 to 12 years ago when I worked in an office for a pharmaceutical company. The office suite was located on the second floor of a building that was mostly a warehouse, and the office area was surrounded by huge windows that opened up onto the busy street in front of the office, strip malls, fast food restaurants, and the huge parking lot for our company. There were only 4 people who worked in my office with me, and all of them one day happened to be in a company meeting. I was relatively new and was left to man the phones and emails while my boss and coworkers were at the meeting for a couple hours. I remember it was a dreary, chilly, cloudy, drizzly day, and between checking emails and popping online to surf the internet, I looked out the big window in front of my desk near the entrance to the office suite. The blinds were pulled all the way open and happened to look out in the distance at something in the sky that caught my eye. It was long, silver gray, and cigar-shaped and heading in my direction. As it got closer, I got up and stood next to the window and couldn't believe what I was seeing. This thing was massive and reminded me of old black and white pictures I'd seen of Zeppelins from the 30s, like the Hindenburg or Graf Zeppelin. I didn't see any markings or words on the craft as it gracefully passed over the office. Amazingly, in the distance, I saw another one of the Zeppelin-type things headed towards me. I impulsively ran out the office door, down the stairs, and out the front door, past the receptionist at the front desk who didn't even look up. I stood in the middle of the parking lot in the cold and mist with no coat on as the airship silently and smoothly floated overhead, not making any sound whatsoever, which I thought odd, nor did I see a gondola or any windows on the bottom of the craft. Just the grayish-black, metallic, shiny color of the rest of the thing. I couldn't gauge how high these airships were flying, but would have guessed a couple thousand feet at least, if not more. I hurried around to the rear of our building and saw both of the airships almost side by side now, slowly get swallowed up into a dark mass of clouds, just as the drizzle began to turn into an actual rain shower, and I ran back into the building, returning to my desk. For a while, it didn't really hit me what I'd just seen, but the more I began thinking about it, the stranger this sighting became. First of all, these kind of Zeppelins ceased to exist in the late 30s, if they were airships, and if they were airships, they would have some kind of identification, not the ominous darkness these things had. Later, the more I replayed the sighting in my head, I began to wonder what I'd actually seen, if these were even Zeppelins or airships or something else entirely. I just got back from a 2-night camping trip on Lopez Island in Washington State. Beautiful area. We left home on Thursday morning and arrived at the campsite around 2 p.m. or so. We stayed at Odlin County Park. It was just me and my girlfriend. The only other person at the entire site come nighttime was an older man in a cargo van of some sort, probably 5+ spots away towards the entrance of the camp. We were pretty far into the camp and were in one of the last spots available. Past us was just woods and trails. We went to bed in our tent probably around 12 or so the first night. Right around 1 or so, I think, is when I started to fall asleep, but I woke up fairly soon to some strange sounds. There were a few sounds of sticks and stuff breaking, but not loud enough for it to be more than a chipmunk or raccoon. That sound didn't bother me too much. What freaked me out is I kept hearing loud knocking noises, usually 1 or 2 at a time, as if someone was banging a stick or rock on a tree loudly. It sounded like it could be anywhere from as close to 50 feet or so from our site to up to hundreds of feet away. It's hard for me to gauge distance with how sound was traveling there, as I don't normally camp in the woods like this. I was pretty tired, so I didn't do a good job recording the intervals or length or anything like that, but I'd say it'd go on for a few minutes at a time, stop for 30 minutes or so, then start again. probably 30 to 60 seconds between knocks. Doing some Googling the next morning, I can't seem to find any reasonable explanation. Everything says Bigfoot. I watched a video saying mysterious woods knocking sound solved, and it was a chipmunk. The sound wasn't very similar to what we were hearing. The sound I heard was much louder. I also saw some people saying it could be a woodpecker. Again, this sound was much louder. Now I was figuring it was just some sort of wildlife noise, and it probably still is, but I thought it was odd that the next night we didn't hear anything. Being Friday night, there were actually other campers, and I listened for it at night when everyone was quiet and still couldn't hear anything. I'd add that the first night I felt quite uneasy and sort of like I was being watched, and the second night I felt normal. Though I do get anxiety sometimes, I could be overthinking that. Any ideas? Thank you. Okay, so I was recently visiting a friend 2 towns over from the town I live in, and I was waiting for the bus at night so I could get home. It's a small town public transport bus, so it's fairly unreliable and frequently late as road conditions are perpetually awful. Also, when I say small town, I mean really small town. This town is essentially just a street with a post office on it. Anyways, I'm at the bus stop, and across the street, this deer pops up from a bush. Deer are everywhere here, so this is not weird at all. I didn't think much of it, since thus far this was a superordinary occurrence. But then things got a little terrifying. It stood up on its hind legs and stared directly at me. I couldn't look away. There was just something that felt profoundly wrong. No one else was around, and it was just me and this deer, still up on its hind legs and making direct eye contact with me in the dark. It was eerie, and the vibes were completely rancid. Finally, the bus pulled up directly in front of me, breaking my eye contact, and I got on. When I looked out the window after getting to my seat, it was gone. I can't stop thinking about this. There was just something really wrong about it. So my son and I recently had to move into my parents' for a while after a nasty split between me and his mother. We've been here for a little under a year, and as he progressively got better at talking and moving around on his own, I started to notice something weird that seems to happen 3 to 4 times a week. He goes into what used to be my oldest brother's bedroom, which now has workout equipment in it, and starts to play around on the treadmill or Bowflex, just whatever, and mid-play he'll abruptly just stop and go dead quiet with a blank expression and just stare out the doorway like he's locked on to someone or something. And if you try to ask him what he's looking at, I've tried 'cause it freaks me out, he either whispers be quiet or shushes you. But he does it in a way that makes you feel like if you don't be quiet, something bad is going to happen. And you can visibly see on his face the urgency. Sometimes he'll walk really slowly to me without breaking contact with whatever he's looking at and just put his arms up to be picked up, which is strange in itself because my son does not like to be held at all. In fact, it's about the only time he's let me or anyone else hold him without throwing an absolute fit. I'm not exactly a skeptic, but I've never really experienced anything paranormal that I can remember. But this is something that definitely feels off to me. I get a little cold chill every single time he starts to act like that. Maybe it's just his imagination, I hope, but wanted to get some other opinions. Am I overreacting, or does anyone else think this is strange? Lots of years ago, when I was pregnant with my first child, her father and I were driving out of town to visit family for dinner. It was dark, and where we were headed was about 15 minutes out of town, down a rural road and close to a beach. While we were driving, I looked out the window and saw a pale woman in a white night dress that was blowing in the wind. It struck me as odd. Why would she be standing there of all places? She was, say, about 100 or so meters from a house, in the dark on a cold night, wearing next to nothing. Her feet were bare. The creepiest feeling came over me, and I realized, after we had driven past, that the figure with the long flowing hair was semi-transparent. I was trying to decipher in my mind what I saw, trying to tell myself that I imagined it, when my partner suddenly said, "Did you just see a woman in a white dress, like a ghost, or was it just me?" When I was around 9 years old, my family had a two-story house. I had four other siblings. Two of them left to Puerto Rico. One of them was around 2 years old, and so that left me and my sister of age 7. On the second floor was all of our rooms, the kids' floor. My sister and I were very easily scared, so when my two siblings left to Puerto Rico, they were the oldest, we made a pact to be around each other no matter what, even going to shower or getting something to drink at night. My youngest brother slept in my parents' room because of his age. One night we were watching TV in the rooms next to each other. She was watching Hannah Montana, and I believe I was watching Robot Chicken. We had a boiler that heated up both rooms. It was basically in the walls, and we were able to communicate through this little gate that kept us from burning ourselves. I became really thirsty, so I got up and walked out of the room, and I looked in her room and wondered if I should even bother her because I hear my mom downstairs in the kitchen. I see her standing up in the middle of the room with the blanket over her head and just facing the TV. I thought she was really into the show, so I let her keep watching and just go downstairs. To my surprise, my sister is downstairs with my mom drinking soda. My very first words were, "How did you get downstairs?" She said she's been downstairs for a while and didn't say anything because I was really into my show. As a very weird and confused kid, I asked, "Is there a secret passageway?" Knowing damn well there's only one set of stairs. I told her I had seen her standing and watching TV. She said it wasn't her as she threw her cup into the sink. So we go upstairs and the blanket is flat on the floor. Years later, I explained the story to my mom and she told me the house was haunted by a little girl. I would hear her at night running around the living room. I brought a priest when you guys were in school, and he told us she was harmless. The reason I didn't say anything that night was because I don't want you guys to be scared. We moved out a couple months after that incident. There was this closet door that kept opening even after it was shut. My dad used to scream at us to keep it closed, but it wasn't us. That closet had my little sister's toys. I wish this was made up, but every time I think about it, I get goosebumps. The house is in Paterson, New Jersey. I just moved into a new house, and I'm scared. I've been living here for about a month now. It is newly constructed by a couple of years. The first couple of weeks, I felt so bright and cheery. Everything felt great. I got great vibes from everything about it. It felt like I had made a great decision. Also, to preface, I do have a carbon monoxide detector. I put it on the first night. My first couple of nights sleeping here, it had already started. I would have auditory hallucinations right before falling asleep, which I've never had before. I would hear a whisper in my ear. The first one was, "Hello, how are you?" And I quickly snapped awake. Then it's been the sounds of yelling, people bustling around me, etc., etc. But I quickly snap up and nobody is there. I quickly started having vivid nightmares every night. I don't usually have vivid dreams, and I haven't had nightmares in forever. It would be things like seeing the inside of my body and my heart was infested with larvae, They were squirming in and out with the tide of my blood. I'd see my house swarming with infestations. I'd be hurt, tortured, killed. My insides were usually always rotting and crawling with bugs. I shrugged this off as it's just dreams, even though it's scary. On the third week, everything quickly went downhill. I decided to do a full tank change on my axolotl tank as it falls and crushes my fingers and leg. Then I discover a large ant infestation in the tank below it. They were so disgusting, and they left a black gooey grime everywhere they were, infesting in corners, crawling over one another. It made me retch and gag. I quickly went out, vacuumed, sprayed, and placed traps. I was done with the tank change when I noticed all of the poison ants start running to the inside of the tank below, drowning and killing themselves in it. I emergency move the fish into another tank, and a pregnant black widow crawls up from the side. I spray her down and move her out. Then a mystery hole appears in the drywall. Spiders crawl out, crawl on the ceiling, and jump onto me from the ceiling while I'm in bed. I have a high loft bed. Pest people have no clue what made the hole, but it keeps getting bigger. They find no termites or any cause. Then I notice the fish shelf is breaking. I go out to buy a new shelf, and Lowe's catches on fire while I'm in it. I leave and go wherever else I can to find a new shelf. I get one and move my tanks onto it when all the glass on the tank breaks and they all fall. This is a new tank, less than a year old, and a good brand. I put them in a bucket and buy them a new tank. I clean it and add a new filter, a new heater, and feed them and say goodnight. I wake up and all of their skin is falling off and they are half dead. I emergency change the water and it does no good. Then my cat gets fleas from I don't know where. He starts to retch and vomit and pees blood. Half of my electrical appliances met their end in these last few days. I threw away so many things it pains me. Things for my fish, extension cords, vacuums, my hair curler fizzled and burned. The heater on the tank stopped heating and instead sent electrical shocks. This all happened in a few days after the hello and the dreams. You could say it's just bad luck and bugs, but it's too much at once and doesn't feel right. My dreams, they tried to warn me. And this whole time there is some rhythmic tapping in the ceiling. No scurrying, the AC and heat are off, there's no water damage. It knocks every hour or so. Sometimes it's short knocking and sometimes it's long. It's always from the same spot. And sometimes there is a bang. That one happens in different spots, usually above my head. Sometimes I hear knocking at the door, and when I go to answer, nobody is there. I keep seeing stuff out of the corner of my eyes. No figure, just a shadow or a light moving across the room. It feels like large bugs are crawling under my skin all of the time I'm in the house, and it burns like I'm on fire. Although this could be because I'm on such high alert, I am so scared. I left and went to my dad's for a few days because I couldn't take it anymore. I felt so good there. As soon as I come back and step foot inside my house, I just feel so much dread. I feel so much better as soon as I step outside, but one step inside and my stomach suddenly drops. What happened to the good vibes in the first couple of weeks? It feels so dark and trapped in here. It used to feel so light and free, but the horrors never end. The pest people sprayed after I found the ants, but they found no large issues. They sprayed anyways because I needed it for peace. The spiders still haunt me. The hole scares me. The whispers, the dreams, the death of my fish, I loved them so much. They find nothing in the attic. I make sure they check it many times, so why does the tapping not end? I sleep with all the lights on in this dreaded house to the sound of tap, 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 tap. Most often in bouts of nines and sevens. It's getting louder and louder. I stole a high school jacket from my older brother almost 10 years ago. I've worn it ever since. It was always big and baggy on me. I was doing laundry, and while pulling clothes out of the dryer, I saw this jacket, which is incredibly weird because I swear to God it was on my bathroom floor after I wore it and showered. I went to check and found this jacket on my bathroom floor. I expected the one in the laundry room to disappear because I'm crazy, but I literally was able to lay them side by side. I have literally no explanation, but now I have two jackets. These aren't a generic high school jacket either. They were made for the swim and dive team specifically. I love that my favorite hoodie duplicated, but still, what? I have this small anecdote from a couple of years ago that bugs me whenever I think about it. So my girlfriend and I were alone in my house, not doing anything particularly interesting, kind of a lazy day, and we were having a conversation. I was standing next to my bed, she was sitting on the edge of it, and we were talking at a distance of about half a meter, looking each other in the eyes. Then, when I was talking, all of a sudden everything went black for a minuscule fraction of a second. It didn't interrupt me. There was no sound or noise. I didn't physically feel anything, but I just saw a black flash. Complete darkness, as if someone had held a sheet of black cardboard right in front of my face for a nanosecond. I completed my sentence, but I didn't let her reply, and I immediately asked her, "Did you see that too? Did everything go black for an instant?" And she said, "Yes," that she saw the exact same thing but didn't say anything because she didn't want to interrupt me. I told her that when it happened I didn't react because I thought I may have blinked involuntarily, but I asked because I didn't feel like I had blinked, and she told me she wanted to ask me the same thing because she was thinking the same. We also agreed that it was impossible that it was something with the lighting because it was in the middle of the day, and even though we were indoors, there's plenty of windows for the daylight to come into, but anyway, even if a huge object flew over my house silently at an absurd speed, we are talking about pitch black darkness, and it was for an instant. There was no visible travel of light before or after. We agreed on how weird it was, but after a while of being confused and neither of us being able to come up with an explanation or find anything online, we gave up and moved on. But as I said, it bugs me to this day. I know it's not much, but the lack of an explanation drives me a bit crazy, and I know it wasn't something internal, like a tiny aneurysm or something, because I wasn't the only one that experienced it. What are your thoughts? Maybe the system went down for maintenance or something? A tiny hiccup with the graphics processor? Hello, little Vickies. Thanks for listening to these allegedly true stories from Reddit. If you like what you heard, please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button as it's very helpful to my growth here on YouTube. If you have a suggestion or simply want to say hello, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description, as are other ways to support the channel if you feel so inclined. I post every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday by 5 p.m. Pacific. Thanks again for being here. I appreciate it more than I can say. And until next time, be good.